And in Liszt too, harmony is a prime sort of compositional factor, isn't it? Liszt goes beyond normal tonality in some of his late works.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
He was a revolutionary composer to extend the harmony of his age.
Did either of these composers as performers, have unusual things about them that made performing this music and composing it to some extent, because the composition follows the performance, did they have exceptionally broad spans or large hands or that sort of phenomenon?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I've been doing some reading. Paganini, it was rumored that he had a syndrome, which we just found out. It's called Marfan syndrome, and what it creates a separation of tissue, and the person, it's a genetic disorder, of course, and the person becomes tall and has very long limbs. And he was able to do what's called the 3-octave span, where he puts a finger on each string and opens 3 octaves. Now, I can do it with a lot of effort. And he didn't need that type of effort. And if you will get a chance to see his picture, you will see how tall he is and how long his limbs are and how long his fingers are. Of course, it's not a photograph, but a drawing. But I think it still captures the spirit. Other than that, some things to remember is that the neck of the violin at the time was a little shorter. That's not to make any excuses, but it was a little shorter, and the violin was, rather than here, it was more at an angle. So the shifting was done basically like this, and you can reach very easily, very high, rather than having to do bigger gestures, which was, first of all, easier, and also, in terms of time, it was shorter, and if it's less time to shift, you can bounce around more easily, and therefore you say, hey, I can do that, get around.
And with Liszt, was it just hard work and practice?
Mm-hmm. It was probably hard work and practice at the time. At the same time, it's interesting, I had an opportunity to play at the National Liszt Festival in Kansas last year in the US, and I could play at Liszt's piano, one of his pianos. And I found it fascinating, just connecting to you very quickly about the violin and the neck of the violin. Mm-hmm. The keys were running so easily. Again, not as an excuse to that he was able to make those passages, but I was able to play those passages. But yes, the piano changed significantly since Liszt's time, and I think it's very important to know that he also had big hands. He had the capability of playing incredible things, probably with a lot of practice and a lot of talent as well. For certain things, you need to just have the right hand if you want to play Liszt. You cannot approach some technical aspects with a smaller hand or with a kind of less flexible hand. So to be optimal for his compositions, you need to have a certain physical.
With these extremes of technique that both composers ask for, I want to ask you a personal question about going out there on stage, knowing that you're pushing your own technique to the limit, playing this music, knowing the challenge. Is it possible to put into words what that feels like?
Can we use expletive?
Oh.
Well, I mean, it's, the Everest is there, so let's climb it. But not everyone will choose to spend their time on that. Why we do what we do, I mean, I have to say, we might need a sofa and a professional to figure out why we do what we do. But the sense of achievement of putting a project like this together is really something that gives you energy for a long time, and it makes a lot of other things easier. I mean, to be totally honest, playing a concerto is not as freaking you out not that it's not as difficult, but you are at such a heightened state of awareness of yourself and the instrument, and also of your ability, that there is a certain, I don't want to say not cockiness and not overconfidence, but just a self-knowledge of what one can do, or where our abilities can lie. So even just for that.
The music is so transparent, Adam. You know, one wrong note and people know, and yet you still do that. You still accept the challenge. Why is that?
It is. It's very transparent. I also think, from a personal side, it's very important to, as you said, to be aware of what we can do and to be confident in what we can do. And also, I had an interesting conversation to a British athlete at the BBC Profile. We had an interview, and his name is Colin Jackson. He holds a lot of world records around the world. He's an athlete, and he talked to me about his inspiration, and he said, "You know, Adam, I wake up every day, every morning, every day, and I work on my strength. And because if I work on my strength, I'm getting better and better in what I'm good at already. And this gives me incredible happiness every day. I wake up, I do what I'm very good at, and I'm getting better every day." You know, for us, I think when we find something what we feel comfortable with, and we feel the ability in ourselves, it's very important to realize that, and to realize the importance of putting energy into what we are good at, and not only our weaknesses. It's important to work on our weaknesses, but very important to work on our strength, then to take it to the next level. So,
right. It's a balancing act.
yes.
Absolutely.
So I think my first experience with Liszt was I gave a phone call to my piano teacher at the Liszt Academy when I was a student. I wanted to cancel a lesson because I wasn't really prepared. It's an old habit at the Liszt Academy that we don't steal the teacher's time. You know, if we're not prepared, we just give a call and we cancel the lesson. So I gave him a phone call, and he's a wonderful personality, a lot of passion, a lot of energy, and he just started to talk to me that a Japanese pianist canceled a recital at the Liszt Academy's Great Hall. And he was about to perform Liszt Concerto No. 1, the piano concerto, and there was no one who could jump in. We had 10 days until the performance, and I was just listening, and from canceling the lesson, I turned to the other side, and I said, "I'm going to replace him at the concert." So I took the 10 days. At the end of his speech, I just told to my teacher that tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, I want you to be at the Liszt Academy, and we're going to work together, and then we have 10 days. And I think that was my first very important Liszt experience in my life, which also gave me confidence that I could do that, and I could be a big part of it.
To do that sort of thing, you said you were speaking with an athlete about it, you have to be somewhat athletic yourself. You have to be fit, you have to be strong, you have to be able to sort of do the rigors of the road travel. You know,
There's all kinds of athletes.
What about Liszt? What about Paganini? You know, how strong were they?
Not so strong.
No.
I don't know about Liszt. Paganini had a list of ailments that can go on WebMD. It was all kinds of things, and I think it probably was made worse because of all the traveling and excessive lifestyle. Also, he was not a healthy person, especially towards the end of his days, and could not really perform.
I read that he was traveling 5,000 kilometers a year by stagecoach. You know,
I mean,
it's bumpy travel.
It takes a toll. I mean, listen, we fly, and that makes you tired. Just not having a comfortable, a familiar bed to sleep in, it takes a toll on your body. And I mean, the syndrome we talked about, yes, it's really nice. He was tall and had long arms, but there are all kinds of side effects that were coming along that were not very nice.
Yeah. Liszt was on the road at one point for 8 years.
Yes,
one of the longest road trips for a musician.
Yeah, he did the longest road trips, and at the time he was the wealthiest man of Europe, you know, at some point. So we must remember that as well, that he was a very famous person, a wealthy person, and a very influential person in Europe at some point.
Were both these, or either of these performers fulfilled as musicians and as people?
I'm sorry, fulfilled as musician and
Fulfilled, that means...
Did they look
do,
back on their life and say,
Listen,
okay, we're happy?
Did they do what they set out to do?
Oh yeah, Liszt must have been at some point. I mean
He knew when to stop performing.
Yes, at some point, yes, and he was teaching later. But at some point, for all his achievements, he must have felt fulfilled. I'm sure about that.
Paganini, on the other hand, didn't know when to stop performing, did he?
No, well, I don't. He definitely remember we saw apparently he refused last rites when he fell ill, thinking that it wasn't that yet, and missed his first rites, and for many years he couldn't be buried because he didn't get the last rites. No, and he also made some decisions in his life that financially were not successful. He opened a casino in Paris, which almost overnight ruined him, and he had to sell all of his instruments. And he had a huge amount of instruments, not just violins, but beautiful violas, cello, and he had to do it to just stay afloat, to recuperate. But no, from what I read, it doesn't seem like he got to the point where he said, okay, I have achieved the point of where my mark in history is made. I don't need to struggle more. But honestly, I think it's maybe a state of mind than an actual achievement. There are people who maybe off the bat know that they will stop at some point, and whatever they will have achieved will work. And there are those they just try to reach the moon, and it's a great journey, but you don't reach the moon.
Do you think Liszt reached that point? I mean, there's a lot of humility in Liszt, and he wouldn't have said as much, but he led a fulfilled life, I believe.
Yes, I think so. I think so. I'm absolutely certain about that. Even if his latest compositions showed a totally different personality. His late compositions, the melancholic, tragic compositions, and those kind of they didn't really connect into his previous compositions at all at some point. Very atonal, very he sort of anticipated the next generation of composers.
Yeah.
It sounds like he was more grounded than Paganini was, from what I'm hearing.
I think so, yes.
Because if you're saying maybe there are opinions about whether he was the greatest pianist, whether it was that clean or not, it sounds like he knew how to maximize what he was doing.
I think so, and at the time, of course, all of us, we're going for perfection. We go on stage and we want to be perfect. We would like to play every single note in the right place, but sometimes perfection isn't technical perfection, So I think his performances success of his performances lied in his personality and musical passion for what he was doing, and not particularly on his technical perfection.
Yeah, the whole concept of perfection, in a way, I think, is somewhat non-human. And we are humans playing for humans. I mean, even if there is a touch of higher power, so to speak, it is people who create this, and it is people who perform this. And this is not to forget. It's great to aspire to perfection, but at the same time, remember that, it's probably not great to achieve it. Because then what's left?
Well, let's leave it on that happy note. Thank you for disassociating the devil from both Liszt and Paganini and making them human beings. Yehonatan Berick, you can be reached at yehonatanberick.com, more about you, and adamgyörgy.com. And we're the festivalofthesound.ca. So thank you very much, and look forward to tonight's concert. Thank you.
Thank you.